All right, guys, so today we'll be breaking down my Sweet 16 power rankings. We're going to be taking a look at every Sweet 16 team. I'm going to be telling you how they got here, so who they beat in the tournament, and why I have them ranked where they are, basically. Okay, so looking at basically the layout of the Sweet 16, we've got 4 1 seeds left, 4 2 seeds, 2 3 seeds, 2 4 seeds, 2 5 seeds, 1 6 seed, and 1 11 seed. Okay, so a lot of chalk, really, for the most part, which probably doesn't make for the best first and second day of the tournament, but the second weekend, it actually makes it a whole lot better because that means we're about to go get a ton of great games over the next weekend and a half. So let's go ahead and get to number 16. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so number 16, my bad. Number 16, NC State. All right, a little spoiler alert there for 15, but 16, NC State, coming out of the South as the 11 seed, path to get here, Texas Tech and Oakland. All right, so tough win against Oakland. All right, kind of got close down the stretch. Texas Tech, they kind of dominated the whole time. Now, Texas Tech has kind of been without some big men. One of them did come back for this game, but he was kind of limited as far as minutes is concerned. He didn't start the game, So I think that really impacted that game a little bit. Now, NC State is hot right now. All right, they've beaten Duke. They beat North Carolina in the past 2 weeks, as well as these teams. Oakland, on the other hand, all right, we know they got hot against Kentucky. All right, they hit all the shots. I don't know how good Oakland was necessarily, but that still, you can only beat who's put in front of you nonetheless. But NC State, really impressive last couple weeks, but I'm still a little skeptical on really what their ceiling is. But hey, hopefully they prove me wrong. All right, 15, we've got San Diego State coming out of the East as the 5 seed. Path to get here, wins over UAB and Yale. UAB really struggled in that game a little bit. Really down to the wire, almost lost that game to UAB. UAB, again, won their conference to get in. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in the tournament. Then they kind of spanked on Yale. Yale coming off an impressive win over Auburn. So similar to NC State, you can only beat who's put in front of you. Now, San Diego State, this is not the San Diego State of last year that made the national championship. They've had a few transfers out, a few guys that left, went pro, graduated, whatever. They're led by Ledee. All right, so he's really impressive. But other than him, they're kind of limited this year. All right. We saw kind of what their capability against UAB was. Now, I can forgive you for having a close game. That's going to happen eventually in the tournament. But San Diego State's resume as a whole, they've got wins over St. Mary's. That's a good win to me, and they kind of killed them. They've got a win over Gonzaga. Gonzaga's still in the tournament as well. But that Mountain West, where they kind of all split with each other, obviously we can tell now the Mountain West isn't that strong. But similar as every year. San Diego State goes on in the tournament. The rest of the Mountain West does not. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Ledee. He's impressive, but other than that, I think San Diego State does not have a lot. So that's why they come in at number 15. Number 14, Alabama. All right, coming out of the West as the 4 seed. Path to get here. Wins over Charleston. A win over Grand Canyon. Pretty dominant win in the first game against Charleston. I know the score was kind of close, but they dominated Charleston. But they still almost gave up 100 points in that win. Then versus Grand Canyon, kind of a sloppy second half. They ended up pulling away. Was kind of tight at some points, but ultimately too much for Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon kind of got out of control in that second half, never ran a set, just really hero ball, one-on-one type of stuff. So Alabama ultimately got the win. So Alabama kind of up and down here. All right, when they're hitting on all cylinders, they can beat anybody, but when they're not, I think they can also lose to a lot of teams. So they, for example, like to really run on offense. All right, Alabama gets out and goes, so they can score 100 points any given night, but also they can give up 100. If they're not hitting on all cylinders. So if the shots aren't falling, they still play fast. That just results in rebounds for the other team to get an open look, So Alabama, they've had a good run so far. I may be wrong here because, like I said, they do have a pretty tough schedule as far as looking at their resume, but I haven't been super impressed with them when watching them. All right, next up we have number 13, Marquette. All right, Marquette coming out as the South as the 2 seed. They finally got Tyler Kolek back. Went on a pretty good run without him, actually, like in the Big East tournament. Still made the championship even without their best player. Path to get here, Western Kentucky, Colorado. All right, almost lost that first round of Western Kentucky. I know looking at the score now, you wouldn't think that happened because they kind of separated at the end, but I think they were down going into halftime against Western Kentucky. Now, part of that was probably getting Kolek back, accumulated to the rest of the team. Then Colorado barely won that one. Now, Colorado is a good basketball team, I think. Their upside's really high. All right, they're really talented. They're fun to watch. But Marquette, I'm a little skeptical on them. Okay, they do look good at certain points. All right, Kolick, Jones, Igabaro, like they look good. They fit the part. But I do have a good matchup. All right, in this next round, which I think favors them. But nonetheless, though, Marquette comes in at number 13 because, like I said, they were down against Western Kentucky and then barely won against Colorado. And I just haven't been super impressed in the tournament. Number 12, Tennessee. All right, coming out of the Midwest as the 2 seed. All right, path to get here. Big win over St. Peter's, and then a really close win against Texas, which I saw some stats. It was like the worst shooting performance ever to win a tournament game, which was probably true. All right, they couldn't hit anything. If they could have hit any shots, they would have blown out Texas because Texas was trying to give them that game. They would blitz Ace Smith up top for Texas, steal the ball, and then miss a 3 or something, just over and over and over. Because Texas had a shot to win this game, and Texas played terribly. But Tennessee didn't play that bad. They just couldn't hit shots. But Tennessee, that kind of worries me what they did against Texas because Texas is not a very good basketball team this year, and they struggled to get that win. Like I said, they shot pretty bad, so it could have just been a bad shooting performance. I know Dalton Connect is really good. They won the SEC for a reason in the regular season, but I haven't been super impressed with them, in particular that second round against Texas. Like I said, they did not impress me and didn't look like a very good basketball team. Like I said, they would get a steal and then miss a 3. Now, maybe that just happens. Sometimes I know they're obviously never going to shoot that bad again probably, but I'm a little skeptical on Tennessee just because of that performance against Texas. All right, number 11, Duke. All right, coming out of the South is the 4 seed. Path to get here, Vermont and James Madison. Duke kind of been an up and down year. All right, we know they're super talented. We know they can beat anybody. They've gotten swept by North Carolina this year. Looked pretty bad in that Vermont game, not like a Duke team. And when I've watched them this year, they haven't really looked like a Duke team as far as living up to, what their talent level should be. They are definitely talented, but they just look a little sloppy. In particular, Blake's, whenever he steals the freaking ball, like he looks like he's a peewee kid trying to, dribble down the court and just loses control. Like he'll get a steal and then turn it right back over or something. Like definitely stuff that shouldn't be going on at a D1 school, let alone a major D1 school, let alone probably in high school. But Vermont, they struggled, but they got the win. And then they kind of blew out James Madison. But James Madison, I'm not entirely sure how good James Madison really was. Like, yeah, they beat Michigan State at the beginning of the year, but Michigan State really up and down themselves. James Madison did lose to Appalachian State twice. So Duke has the talent level to beat anybody, but I'm going to need to see a little more before they move up. All right, number 10, Gonzaga. All right, coming out of the Midwest is the 5 seed. Path to get here. Pretty dominant win so far over McNeese State and Kansas. McNeese State, I really don't think that team was very good, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. I know they killed them, but then against Kansas not near their full self. All right, without Kevin McCullough. Now, I know Gonzaga has their own injuries as well, so I do know that. I do acknowledge that, but this is like power rankings for right now. Again, they've dominated both teams, so they may be legit. But looking at their schedule, their resume throughout the year, their schedule, I'm a little skeptical on it. Like their big win was against Kentucky, and we saw what happened to Kentucky. They got beaten by St. Mary's 2-1 this year. St. Mary's got dipped in the first round. So this is one of the weaker Gonzaga teams of recent memory to me. I have been really impressed with Nimhard from Creighton. I think he's a good point guard, but I don't know what Gonzaga's ceiling is. I don't think it's very high. Now, I may be wrong. They may come out and beat Purdue, but I don't see it happening. All right, number 9, Creighton. All right, coming out of the Midwest is the 3 seed. Path to get here, wins over Akron and Oregon. Really struggled in that game against Oregon. All right, went to double overtime. Now, Oregon was hot at the right time. They won the Pac-12 tournament. Kind of got some guys back, key guys that have been injured throughout the year, and looked like a pretty good team to me. Creighton beat Akron pretty handily, but again, against Oregon, kind of struggled. Now, Creighton's upside is definitely really high, and they've been pretty consistent throughout the year. Like, they beat UConn by 20 points almost. So they have really impressive wins. But again, that Oregon game, if they let another team hang around like that that's left in the tournament, that team's going to beat them because there's no slouches left. And if you let a team hang around like that, they're going to beat you. They're not going to let you get back into the game. They're not going to inbound it to the center, the worst shooter on the team, and let you foul him for some stupid reason. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Oregon basically was up 2, I think, like 10 seconds left in regulation, up 2. They can't get the ball in. They bring their center up, which is the worst free throw shooter on the team. They inbound it to him. Creighton fouls him. He misses the first free throw on the 1-on-1, and then Creighton comes down and hits a shot. So just any team that's left is going to probably be better than that. But I think Creighton's upside's there. Like I do have them coming out of this region as far as my picks are concerned, but they haven't really lived up to par for me so far in the tournament. All right, number 8, Clemson. All right, really big riser here. Coming out of the West is the 6th seed. Path to get here, wins over New Mexico and Baylor. Full disclosure, I had Clemson losing in the first round. I didn't see them winning that game. Like, you take their first 10 games of the season, Clemson's the top 10 team. But after that, the more they got into the ACC play, they dealt with some injuries, but they kind of lost to some teams they shouldn't lose to that like aren't even in the tournament, for example. But they've kind of got everybody back now. Their best players back, and their upside's high. They can kind of bully you down low. And they dominated New Mexico. They dominated Baylor for the most part. And they've looked good so far. They've really risen up this list for me. Like, if you would have asked me a week ago, these are the 16 teams in, I probably would have had Clemson at 16. But they've looked really good when I've watched them. And a different style of ball from a lot of the teams left. But they look good to me. They beat Baylor pretty handily with their best players, 2 best players probably, in foul trouble. They set out the majority of the first half, and yet they still won pretty good. So I think Clemson's legit. I think they might be able to beat Arizona this week. We'll see. All right, number 7, Houston. All right, probably our biggest faller. Coming out of the South is the 1 seed. Path to get here, went over Longwood, went over Texas A&M. They should have lost that game to Texas A&M. If Texas A&M was more sound, like, they would have won that game easily. All they got to do is hit free throws and maybe don't call timeout when your guy has a freaking wide open layup, but that's just me. Houston, the good news for them is they got that game out of the way. All right. I still think this team is definitely national champion caliber. Pretty much every one of their starters got in foul trouble against A&M. All right, like by overtime, almost everyone almost fouled out. In particular, Shed, Cryer, their best 2 players were fouled out of that game, and they had to walk on shooting free throws in overtime. Like, that's how bad it got. But Houston, upside is definitely there. I know they got kind of blown out by Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. I'm not going to acknowledge that. Iowa State, I think, won it a little more. But Houston has been one of the best 3 teams all year. Them, Purdue, and Uconn. And I think Shed, he's made the Final Four as a freshman. Now he's a senior. Like, I think that really helps, having a guy that's been there, particularly that's your best player and your point guard. That definitely helps. And I think they are capable of winning a national championship, but that win against A&M kind of worries me a little bit. Now, A&M, we know they're super talented, but they've been so up and down. Houston's got to close that game. They were up by double digits with like 2 minutes left, I think. And then went into overtime, like complete collapse. But they made it out of there alive, so they lived to fight another day. All right, coming in number 6, Arizona. Out of the West is the 2 seed. Path to get here, Long Beach State, Dayton. Haven't really had too much of a test yet. Dayton kind of got a little dicey at some points. Dayton started pressing them a little bit and giving them some issues with pressure on the backcourt. But ultimately, Arizona separated. They were the better team. Arizona is really talented. All right. Caleb Love coming over. You've got Johnson coming over from San Diego State. I think Arizona's capable of winning a national championship. And if they win this week, they might get a matchup Caleb Love with his old team, North Carolina. I think we all want to see that. Their talent level, like I said, their upside is way up there, similar to Duke. And they've looked pretty good so far this year as far as in the tournament. Now, they had some questionable losses, like they got swept by Washington State in the regular season. That's not a bad loss, but I would think you could beat Washington State once at least, if you think you're a national champion team. So I question, what their ceiling is, because this team, as far as when Tommy Lloyd's been here, they've been known to get knocked out early, So that might happen again here. I don't know, but they're definitely talented enough, to play with anybody. All right, coming in at number 5, Iowa State, coming out of the East, is a 2 seed. Path to get here, wins over South Dakota State, wins over Washington State. Then right before that, like I said, beat Houston by about 30 in the Big 12 championship. Kind of struggled with Washington State a little bit in the first half, but separated by the end to make it to where it wasn't in question. Washington State kind of jumped out early on them. Looked like there was going to be a serious game there, but Iowa State wasn't too much there. They're really good defensively. We'll see this week against who they're going to play. I'll get to them in a little bit. Obviously, they're not mentioned yet, talking about Illinois. But Iowa State's really good defense against Illinois' really good offense, all right? Ken Palm-wise, at the moment, it's the number 1 defense in Iowa State versus the number 1 offense in Illinois. They're going to have their hands full. But Iowa State defense travels, all right, and that kind of helps you out in games where shots aren't falling. You can rely on your defense to win you ball games. So that's definitely going to benefit Iowa State. And the winner of that game, I think, has a legitimate shot at beating UConn. All right, number 4, North Carolina. Coming out of the West is the 1 seed. Path to get here, Howard and Michigan State. So Michigan State jumped out early on them, similar to Iowa State, but Michigan State had more of a lead. Like, it was a double-digit lead at the beginning of the game. But North Carolina weathered the storm, ends up kind of separating by the end of the game, I think by about 15 to where it's not in question. North Carolina, kind of like I said with Houston earlier, talking about Shed being here before. North Carolina, Armando Bacot, RJ Davis have made the national championship before, back a few years when Brady Manick was on the team. Like, they were both here before. RJ Davis, really good. I think Caleb Love kind of took away from his shots a little bit. Then besides them two, they've got a bunch of wings kind of in the middle that can really play. They're long, lengthy, good shooters. You know, Cormac Ryan's a good shooter. And then they've also got Ingram, for example. Like, they've got some big guys, long arms that can kind of help on defense and kind of play that wing spot for you when you already have the big man and point guard. North Carolina's a serious threat, I think, and they've impressed me so far. Number 3, Illinois. All right, this is who Iowa State's going to play this matchup this week. East 3 seed, path to get here, Morehead State, Duquesne. Look dominant so far. These 3 teams at the top have not really been in question as far as any of the games. Some of the other teams have kind of not been in doubt, but struggled at some points, at least been behind like a little bit at first, or showed some issues. But these top 3 teams have shown no issues in the tournament. They've just ran through everybody. Now, Illinois, they kind of got a good matchup in that second round with Duquesne. Duquesne wasn't very good, I don't think. Like, they had to win their tournament to get here. And kind of got, I won't say lucky, but got lucky BYU was cold to beat BYU in the first round. But Illinois has looked dominant. They're on a roll right now. Won the Big Ten tournament. Coleman Hawkins, Terrence Shannon, Dumask. Like, they're legit. Like, they've got some guys. They've also got a 4th and 5th one that are pretty good as well. But Terrence Shannon can go win you a ball game by himself. Coleman Hawkins can as well. Coleman Hawkins, one of the more underrated players in the country. Probably one of my favorites to watch because he's pretty unselfish. Like, he'll pass the ball even though he could probably score every time if he wants to. He's really impressive to me. And Illinois looks good to me. I think they can beat Iowa State and they can beat UConn, I think. They've impressed me when I've watched them. Their offensive ability is off the charts, better than anybody in the country probably. Why I said they have the number 1 offense in the country according to KenPom. Illinois can play with anybody based off that alone. Their offense, they can score. Now the question is going to be when the shots get cold, if they get cold, what are they going to do? So we'll see when that happens. It hasn't happened yet, but as of right now, they're rolling. All right, coming in number 2, Purdue. All right, path to get here, Grambling State, Utah State. The reason they're number 2 over UConn, or under number 1 UConn, is because I thought Northwestern was a little better than Utah State. That's the only reason. So Purdue coming out of the Midwest, the 1 seed, like I said, path to get here, Grambling State, Utah State. Dominant performances across the board so far. As for Utah State, they just fouled Edey over and over in the first half, getting free throws like people have all year. And they were just outmatched and kind of beat themselves from getting down so much from those fouls, getting in foul trouble. Then you just got to start jacking up the threes at that point. But Purdue's looked dominant. All right, the guard play looks better than it did last year in the tournament, and Edey looks pretty unstoppable right now. All right, number 1, UConn coming out of the East is the 1 seed. Path to get here, one's over Stetson, one's over Northwestern. Like I said, I thought Northwestern's a little better than Utah State. Northwestern has beaten Purdue, for example. Northwestern led by Boo Buie, which is a really good ball player, by the way. UConn, though, easily won that game. All right, by double digits easily. About 20, 30 all game, pretty separated there. And UConn, I know they lost some key pieces from last year's championship team, but this team looks poised to repeat. Like, Newton's really good, but when I've watched him, Klingon he's a monster down low. And if we can get a him and Edey matchup, I'm all here for it in the championship. I'd love to see that. Both those big men go at it. Like, that's some fun basketball to watch right there. But UConn has looked absolutely dominant. All right, really impressive resume as well. And at the moment, nobody's giving them a test. We'll see if San Diego State can this first game in the Sweet 16, but got my doubts. But, guys, those are my rankings. Let me know yours. All right, rank the Sweet 16s for me down in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe.